All right, hello friends and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Arturo and today we are working on making a heart in Blender and then displaying it on the display that you saw at the beginning of this stream, which is the looking glass portrait in this case. It's a holographic display and we'll talk more about it as we get started on the stream, but I will say I've been having a bit of technical difficulties getting the screen up and running and connected to Blender for some reason. So we will probably be doing some troubleshooting with that later on if that doesn't work. But since the main focus of this is on just creating the heart for Valentine's Day, then we'll get started on that right away. But I did want to show you right before we do that what the display looks like. Because I know that not a lot of people have had the experience of enjoying or witnessing what holographic displays are like nowadays. And this is one that's really special, or so I think. And so I want to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to quickly transition here from this screen to one that showcases what the holographic display, in this case, the looking glass portrait, looks like when it is functioning. I think it's just a matter of resetting some of the software that I'm using in order to connect the display with Blender. But again, more on that later. So for now, check this out. So this is the looking glass portrait. It's by a company called Looking Glass Factory, and it's a personal holographic display. Now I hope that you can hear me okay. Hopefully I'm not just talking to myself. So I'm going to quickly do a check in the chat, make sure that everybody can hear me. But I see Pers and Sotomonte are here. Thanks so much for joining. Sotomonte says, damn, I was about to turn off my phone and sleep, but I saw you're live. Good luck on the stream. I'm sure it's going to be a banger. Thank you, Soto. Thank you. I'm going to wait here a little bit and see if people can hear me. I'm guessing that you can, given that I'm seeing some levels bouncing. But again, this is the looking glass portrait. If you haven't seen what it looks like, now you have. It's a holographic display. It allows you to take work that you've done in 3D in Blender and other such tools like Maya, Unreal Engine, and the like, and then showcase them in a holographic format for people to enjoy from multiple angles. What you are seeing here on the screen now are some of the many renders that I and my partner Ellie have put together for the looking glass, some of which I've actually done on stream on this very channel. So if you like this sort of stuff, consider subscribing. It really helps the channel and the algorithm know that this is content that you like. And if you want to stay in tune with the updates and the live streams that I'm doing, then certainly hit the notification bell if that's your sort of thing. And then if at the end of everything you've learned something or you've enjoyed the stream, then give it a like. Again, that helps the channel, helps me out to do this sort of thing. It's something that I'm passionate about. It's something that I do for fun. I enjoy teaching, and I enjoy kind of talking through my process every now and then, something I hope to do more often. So with that said, let's dive in. Let's see if we can't get this screen working. I'm going to quickly go back to just Blender screen here, okay, and transition over. So part of the reason why I'm doing this stream is that I have done some streams in the past and I kind of want to get back into it. I was mentioning earlier today in a Blender Royale, which we can talk about if people are interested, that I tend to do these live streams and then I take like a mental health break of like a month or more sometimes. But this is something, again, that I enjoy the process of, and I do want to, get more comfortable and let loose, so to speak, in doing these. So we'll see if that works out. Right now, as you see here on my screen, there's no looking glass found. I'm trying to troubleshoot why that might be. It's something that's happened before. I just don't quite remember why it wasn't working. It was working yesterday, but that's how these things work out. But no matter. On with the stream, we're creating the heart. In this case, the one that you saw again at the opening of this stream. And let me just put Blender here on the side. Great. So first things first, what we want to do is actually select a heart. I actually have some instructions here And just so that we're both on the same page, I'm going to open the text editor here in Blender as soon as I can locate it. There we go. Start a new note. We'll call this HoLOVEgram, which was a little zinger that kind of came to mind during a live stream with the folks over at Looking Glass a couple days back, and inspired this whole thing. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to open up emojipedia.com. I'm seeing if I can make this maybe a bit larger. Maybe not. Okay. So we want, first things first, we want to select the heart that we want. So we're going to go to emojipedia.org, which is where we're going to source the heart that we're going to be using for this stream. And very quickly, since it's just us and friends here, I'm going to adjust my Blender screen because it's looking a bit wonky here and I don't like that. So we'll just fit it to the screen. There we go. Looks a bit less stretched. That's me in the darkness. This is the behind the scenes. I see you there in the chat, Enzo. Thanks for tuning in. We've readjusted all the screens. Perfect. And now we're going to check out Chrome. So we're here on Chrome. Let's expand this one too. Fit that to screen. You know, it's been a minute since I've used Streamlabs, and to be honest with you, I'm looking to swap to something else like OBS, just because I just feel like it's not really doing what I want it to do. So we'll go to emojipedia.org, as I said, and here's where we're going to select the heart. I'm going to quickly drop that link in the chat for anybody who's tuning in. There we go. We'll drop that link in the chat, and now you can go to emojipedia.org and select the heart that you want. In this case, I believe I selected the Samsung heart. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click, save image as, save it somewhere where you can find it. In my case, it's saved in a reference folder, and that's the heart that we're going to bring into Blender to kick things off for us. All right, so we'll go back into Blender, and we're going to close the screen just like this for now. Get rid of the default cube, as one often does. And if you don't have this add-on installed yet, we're going to install images as planes, I believe it's called. Yes. And what this will do is it'll help us bring in reference images and other images into Blender to use as planes, as you might imagine. It's very handy. I believe it comes pre-installed. So if just quickly check within your Blender installation. In this case, I'm using the 3.1 alpha by going into Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, searching for the word Images in the box that shows up, and then enabling the add-on by clicking on this checkbox. And what that will allow you to do is hit Shift-A, or bring up the Add menu, however you manage to get to that, and you can bring in a reference image, a background image, or an image as planes. In this case, we're going to use a reference image. And I'm going to navigate to the folder in which I've saved this heart. In my case, it's called heart.png, and it's saved in my reference folder. In your case, you may have saved it elsewhere. And we've got the heart here in Blender. I'm going to take a quick pause to check on the chat and see how folks are doing, if my audio is sounding okay. And if at any point I'm going too fast, if you're new to Blender, you don't know the shortcuts that I'm using, and you're joining in, then certainly let me know, and I will either slow down or explain in more detail what it is that I might be going over. But, you know, not seeing any questions in the chat, I'm going to continue. So we've got this image loaded in, and it's called empty. I'm going to rename it to heart just so we stay organized. And I'm also going to quickly change the size of the text and such here on the interface. We'll set it to 1.2 just so that things are a little bit easier to see on the screen. I'm using an unconventionally sized monitor, and that's why you might see some stretching within the stream of certain screens and such, but don't worry about that. I'm also going to make it such that I can't select the heart image in the background because that might get in our way later on. And I'm going to pull up my reference here because it's going to keep me organized. I want to make sure that I keep this stream under an hour just to be mindful of folks' time. And this is actually quite simple to do if you're somewhat familiar with Blender. And if you're sort of new, it might take you a little bit longer, but that's okay. It's not terribly difficult. So it shouldn't take us more than half an hour or so to get through this, even with my explanations. But we'll see if I can stick to that. All right. So we've got the heart image in Blender, and we've got a cube. We've brought it in using our add menu here. And so that means we've already done these first two steps. We'll get rid of those. We've imported image as reference into Blender. Yep, we've done that too. And we don't need to rotate the image in our case because we were in front-facing view. So we'll delete that. All right, we'll follow the notes that I gave myself here. In this case, I scaled the heart to the size of the cube. And then I subdivided the cube. There's several ways to do this. And when I was working on this, I believe I chose a subdivision of 2. I used Control 2 to do that. You can also go into your modifiers menu here, add a subdivision surface modifier, and set the levels in the viewport to 2. And if you don't know what that's doing, it's just taking that cube and it's essentially chopping it up for us in different ways by applying subdivisions and giving us more geometry to work with as we're playing around with this cube. So now we've gone from having a cube to having a circle, which is pretty fun to mess around with and to start working with. It gives us flexibility that we didn't have before with the limited geometry that is present in the cube. All right. And we will also turn on Screencast Keys here, which will just allow me to... it seems like they are turned on. Just don't want to be narrating everything that I'm doing, so let's see if this will do it. Doesn't seem like it's working. That's okay. All right, so we've got this cube. It's been subdivided by 2 different levels, as we see here in the modifier stack. And now what we're going to do is, by using Control R, which creates an edge loop, we're going to create an edge loop. We're going to turn on, make sure that our X-ray view is on here in the top right. And we'll select half of the heart. And like that John Mayer song, I'm just going to get rid of it. Okay, half the heart, we don't need it. Now we're going into our vertex selection mode. And essentially what this process entails, it's tracing in some way the image that we have in the background. So we have this heart image and we have this cube. We'll call this heart image so you can follow if you're not too familiar with Blender's interface. And we'll call this heart over here in our scene collection. And with X-ray mode enabled, we can see through it, right? So what we're going to do, and we can also select without having to necessarily click on this vertex and click on this vertex to move them around. Making a selection like this will automatically select both of them because we can see through them. So we'll select both of these middle vertices, hit G to grab them, and Z or Z key to bring it down on the Z axis to about here. And then another loop. And same operation, G to grab and Z to lock the movement on the Z axis. We'll do another edge loop here. Select both of these, right? Because we've got X-ray mode turned on. G to grab, Z to bring it up on the Z axis. We'll do another one. Select them both. G to grab, Z to bring it up on the Z axis. And if I turn off X-ray mode, what we'll see, and I'll turn off edit mode, what we'll see is that we start getting this shape that we're looking for here, this heart shape, as well as multiple subdivisions. And that's good, because that's the shape that we want, right? And you might be wondering, okay, how come we're only doing half of the heart? Well, if we add a mirror modifier here in the modifier stack, we automatically get the other half. So this is a very useful way of working if you're working with geometry that can be mirrored or that's the same on both sides, because you don't have to worry about working with the vertices or the vertex or faces of one and then duplicating that same work on the other side. You can just simply get rid of half of the problem and then have the other half essentially work itself out after the fact or as you're working through it. So let me demonstrate what I'm talking about here. Because we've added this mirror modifier, if I were to select these vertices, we see that any changes that are happening on the left-hand side can also replicate on the right-hand side. And so that's a really clean, fun, and useful way of working, especially, again, when we're working with geometry that can be easily duplicated or replicated on both sides. I'm going to take a quick pause to check on the chat. I want to make sure I'm not leaving anybody unread. And say hello to Enzo over on Twitch. Thanks for watching again. And now we will just continue working through and aligning, essentially, these bits of geometry with the image that we have underneath. So for the bottom, I'll take these bottom vertices here. Again, with X-ray mode enabled, that's probably the most crucial bit here. Otherwise, you'll end up with wonky geometry on one side and not the other, which is not the end of the world. We can still fix it, but it's not ideal. And we will start pushing these vertices to their specific spots here. Again, somewhat tracing the heart. And if we turn all this off, we've got a heart shape going. Not too bad. And I'm not too worried about having perfect geometry or perfect distribution or such, because this is not, well, firstly, I have a somewhat beefy computer, so I have the benefit of not having to worry too much about being clean in that regard. Not saying that this is the best way to work, and definitely not encouraging sloppy behavior of that type. But it's just, for something like this, I can spare the the additional subdivisions and such. And for the most part, you should be able to as well, unless you're working on a really old computer that just can't handle it. You should be fine. So we'll check here on the HoLOVEgram note I've left for myself here. We've done all of these steps so far, and I've noted all of this. Okay. So we'll keep working along here. And again, this is moving so quickly that I'm kind of, I'll be up front with the 4 of you watching. The biggest stressor I've got right now is not so much talking about what I'm doing out loud, but knowing that half of the problem, which is the displaying this heart on the looking glass, is yet unsolved. I'm not entirely sure why that's not working, but we can troubleshoot that together when the time comes. So we've got this heart almost ready. In this case, I'm going to take all these vertices and stretch them this way. I'm using S here to scale it down along the Z axis, which is why you see the blue line. And just organizing them. Again, tracing is I think, a good comparison here. At least that's what it feels like. And you could have done this with any of the other hearts in that menu, in that emojipedia.org link that I shared. And it would have looked just as well if you followed along. So we've got a bit of a problem, which is that the heart is looking a bit stretched on that side. So this green line here, as we see denoted here on this gizmo, is the y-axis. So we're going to select S to scale, and then Y to lock the scaling on the y-axis. And we're going to scale the heart way down. And if I go to front view here, we've got the heart. I'm going to right click and shade smooth, and this looks even better. And if I change the order of the mirror and subdivision modifier here, we should see some clearing of that not great looking line down here. We can add some edge loops around the side just to give the heart a bit of a cleaner shape. And we're pretty much there. So if we grab these bottom edges here, like that, and turn on proportional editing, which you can do up here where my mouse is hovering at the moment, or you can press the shortcut O. We can scale proportionally, which means, well, you'll see what that means in a moment. So the circle of influence, so to speak, is this circle that's growing and shrinking here. And if I shrink it, then I can scale proportionally based on the size of that circle. So that's what I'll do to get a narrowing here of the heart. And if I wanted to grab, say, this edge here and then scale the heart along that side, or grab it and pull it a bit, we could do that. I think for the sake of leaving it nice and clean, I'm going to leave the heart as is. We'll get rid of the image by hiding it. And there you go. It's a really quick way of making a heart in Blender. Now, it doesn't look the cleanest, and you can play around with the geometry as you wish to get it, you know, the rest of the way there. I'll do that shortly. Just to see if we can't get a nice clean heart. And how is that looking? A little bit better. That stretching is nearly gone. It's not something I'm too deeply worried about, because once we add a texture to this by going to the material properties, selecting a new material, call it heart, change the base color to red, and go to the shading preview mode, you're done. We've got a heart. So we'll get rid of this node here, because I think we followed it to the T. And that's it. You've got a heart in Blender if you've been following along. We're good. Oh, I see Drace is also in the chat. Drace, thanks for joining. Appreciate you. And it's quick and dirty heart. We've done it in less than 30 minutes, actually. So now we can spend the rest of the time trying to figure out why the heck my looking glass add-on is not working. And I'm nearly 100% certain that this is user error. So I'm going to quickly check to make sure that they haven't updated anything that might be breaking my progress here. It seems that I'm using the right version, 1.2.2. I do have my looking glass display connected, but let's just quickly unplug it and replug it, because that seems to always fix everything. Holoplay service. Now I do have a I do have a theory which I'm going to test now, and it's going to break things slightly. So what we'll do is we'll save this, which we should have done ages ago. Save it as a heart live stream. Okay, and I'm going to close Blender and send you back to the beginning screen. Inflate it, says Stephen Scott. Hello, Stephen. Yeah, I should inflate it. It's looking a bit a bit sad, and for some reason it looks even more stretched on the live stream than it does on my own screen. So let me see if there's something I can do about that. No, I can't do much about that. The output scaling on Streamlabs is converting it to 1280 by 720 when the original base canvas resolution is 2560 by 1080. And that is part of the reason why I don't want to continue using Streamlabs. But that's a problem for another day. It looks great on my screen. Yeah, I will say that. Okay. So my theory, which was going to break everything, is that I'm using 3.1.0 alpha of Blender so that I can take advantage of the NVIDIA Omniverse tools that are enabled with that version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly save this, and I'm going to send you all back to the loading screen so you can enjoy some music and the finished version of a render that I put together with this heart while I load up Blender 3.0, which I know to work with the Looking Glass add-on. So without further ado, be right back. Well, what do you know? That seemed to fix the problem. Now you've lost the Blender screen, but that's okay. Let's see if we can bring it back. He says as he struggles to find it. Trust me, it's working. We're all in black. This is fine. Everything is fine. Blender, there we go. We're back. Oh, right. So this is exciting because we've now we're in Blender 2.9.3 and HoLoPlay service, which you can't see because it's part of the Windows OS that is running and not part of the Blender that I'm showcasing, is detecting the screen, which is something that we need in order to see our work from Blender on the Looking Glass. No Looking Glass found. We'll hit refresh. Now it's found the Looking Glass. exciting. And I'm going to quickly jump over to Streamlabs and go to my Streamlabs and Looking Glass screen. You'll see that Looking Glass is not displaying anything at the moment. That's my hand. And now we will click on this light field window, which pushes a window to the Looking Glass. We got the calibration menu, and in a couple, oh, we don't actually have a camera yet, so we'll add one real quick. Did not mean to go into this view. We'll just add a Looking Glass camera. It's giving us some trouble, but trust me, I know what I'm doing. Okay. Great, so that's the origin. We can't see it yet if you're looking over at the Blender screen because the clip start and the clip end are all wonky, but once we change that, boom, there it is, the heart. And if you look over at the bottom right of the screen right now, you'll see the heart. The focus point is off, so we'll fix that. Let me check on the chat real quick. Steven says, inflate it, cloth. Rather than inflate it, blow it up. Oh man, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know how to do that, but we can try. Change the refresh mode here to manual because I just know from experience that it works better on my machine if I do it this way. And now that we've got the camera selected, we'll frame up the heart how we like. Change the clip end to something further back. Try to give it some dimension here. And if we refresh, we'll see the heart refresh too in the bottom right corner. It's not looking the way we might want it to because the focal plane is not in the right spot. But once we change that, we refresh again. There we go. We've got the heart looking pretty good on the screen. And if we switch over to the view mode here, rendered view, and refresh again, there you go. We've got our heart on the Looking Glass display. And even though this is just a preview mode, you get several views to look at. If you're looking over at the bottom right of the screen, I'm just holding my phone and moving it around to give you an idea of the dimension that you can see on the Looking Glass portrait display when you're using this Blender add-on, which is pretty great. It really allows you to easily start iterating on your work and seeing it in real time if you wanted to in an additional dimension holographically. Now we can do whatever we like with this heart. We can duplicate it and take the sculpt tool at it and clean it up a little bit, apply the modifiers, bring in assets from Sketchfab and put hearts all over them. I'll change the, I'll actually save this because I'm happy with it, but just to work on something and take it that extra level by taking it into 3D, we'll open the HoLOVEgram that I was working on earlier. And we'll add a Looking Glass camera to it. Again, the clipping will be off initially. We don't need the timeline at the moment. Send the light field viewport to Looking Glass, and I see that it's rendering. It's not doing so properly at the moment. So maybe what we need to do is just add a looking glass camera. There we go. And view the world from that looking glass camera. I've got the photographer add-on, which makes it really easy to just switch between different screens, but you don't need it. You can just select the camera itself and hit 0 on the number pad. So you would select it here on the outliner in Blender on the top right corner, hit 0 on the number pad, and it will take you to looking through that camera. Okay, and I'm going to lock the camera to the view and just try to emulate the frame that I had before. Maybe something like this. Lagging a little bit. Let's change this to manual here. Let's bring the focal plane back. Here we go. So now we're cooking with grease, some of my friends love to say. We've got, this scene fleshed out with some lights. This is something I worked on earlier. And if we wanted to render this quilt to get an accurate representation of what it will look like on the looking glass, we can do that. I'll do it quickly once I'm happy with the settings here. Let's put the focal plane actually on the looking glass. Too much. 2.3 seems to be there. Something you can start experimenting if you're familiar with different photography exposure and focus settings is to start changing the focal length of your camera, and that will give different effects when rendered on looking glass. Check in the chat. Yeah, I'm hating how, or not, not really liking the way that this is so stretched out on the screen. And I will work that out because I know that it's a Streamlabs situation and configuration. But again, I'm probably not going to be using Streamlabs for the next stream just because they also have even though it's great to be able to multi-stream, currently this is being streamed to both YouTube and Twitch simultaneously. It doesn't enable me to stream for longer than an hour on YouTube without it cutting out, and that along with a bunch of other reasons, just turning me off to the idea of using Streamlabs. So there is some disparity here in the lighting, but we shouldn't see it once we render this view. So we'll render this quilt. It will start taking photos from separate angles here. Just want to make sure that my dimensions and everything is set properly. It allegedly is, so we'll see. Switch over to Quilt Viewer, select the recent quilt render result, and there's our heart. Now, we do have a bit of an issue with the hearts that are a bit closer to the camera. This is because originally this render was laid out for the screen that you saw at the beginning of the stream. But we can quickly fix that just by moving them a little bit closer to the looking glass portrait within the render, or further away from the camera and closer to the focal plane. But you start to get the idea of how fun it is to be able to mess around with your renders in 3D space in this way. Something that you can really quickly iterate on. So I'll just turn the outline here so you can follow along with what I'm doing. I'm selecting the hearts. I'm just going to bring them back to this white line here. This heart's over here just chilling, so we'll lay it out right here maybe. And we can see what that might look like before we render it. Now everything's looking a bit sharper. I like the way that that looks. I think we should add more hearts. So select this one, duplicate it, and just plop it here. And so long as we keep everything proximal to this white line, everything should be in focus or out of focus to a degree that doesn't look jarring. And that's what you want, really. Now, if I were a bit more technical within Blender, I could do some crazy geometry node stuff, but I'm not quite there yet. But it would be fun to see what you come up with. So if you use this and make your own hearts and want to showcase them on Looking Glass Portrait, all you have to do is download the add-on, which I'll link in the chat in just a second. So it's in the chat. It will also be in the description if you're watching this asynchronously. And make something, line it up with the camera in the way that I've done here and explained. So the short version of it is you want without all these lights and such in the way. So let's get rid of them. Essentially, you want this camera here that's selected and this white line, white square rather, which is the focal plane that moves whenever we slide these values here. You want the focal plane to line up with your hero object. And everything around it can line up relative to that. And so once that's ready, we'll just go back here real quick. We'll refresh. Seems like we lost the screen. So we'll just send it over. Yep, that's looking a lot nicer already. I want to not cut that little heart out. So select the Looking Glass camera and frame it up so that we get that other heart too. Not too much though. We don't want to lose the focal point here. So let's refresh, see what that looks like. Looking better. And we'll render the quilt. Bellidos 3D says, "Hey Arturo, long time no see. How goes it?" It goes well. Thanks so much for joining the stream. As you can see, I'm working on yet another Looking Glass portrait render. This one came out upside down for some reason, but we'll fix that by going over to Quilt Viewer and swapping to the Quilt render result. And none of the hearts came out the way that I intended for some reason. But no matter. I think I know what that might be. All of these have different animations. So I think as soon as I changed their location, everything just kind of went crazy. So we'll do it again for those that are just joining us. How are you, Bellidos, by the way? Long time no see as well. We'll just quickly relay everything out while we await the response. So we'll take this heart, Alt-D to duplicate it, plop it right here, maybe rotate it along the x-axis. I'll duplicate it again, shrink it, rotate it once more. Drop the camera here, check the focal plane. Okay, it's looking good, but everything is away from it again. And I'm going to switch back over to the viewport mode. And in this case, after saving, I'm going to set it to automatic so that it automatically refreshes the looking glass portrait with the latest changes so that you can see what's happening in real time and also get an idea of just how quickly it updates. So select all these hearts. Move them back. I'm not sure that setting it to automatic was a good idea if you want to get this done in a clean way. But knowing that you can just quickly toggle it on helps. The more I play around with it, the more I find that different workflows that achieve better results or different little things that you can change, like I was mentioning earlier. If you play around with the focal length of your camera, you can achieve different results with the final render on Looking Glass, pushing objects or scenes closer to the foreground or further out in the background. And as with everything, I kind of like to break things. I think it's the best way to learn. If you can manage it, just break things. And I think it was Aaron from the Arendelle channel, actually, who first really encouraged me to just break stuff in Blender because, as they said, it's not much that can go wrong. I keep duplicating hearts from here. I'm not sure why. There we go. It's not much that can go wrong. Nothing's going to happen. Your computer's not going to blow up. The worst case scenario, you'll learn something new. And that's the best case scenario to me. Bellydose 3D says, I'm good, thanks. Going through a dry spell 3D wise, though. Why is that, do you know? Nikki Chan from the Looking Glass portrait team themselves is here saying HoLOVEgrams represent. Yes, indeed. HoLOVEgrams represent. Bellydose, I definitely understand going through a dry spell. I've been going through my own streaming and just 3D / work dry spell, really. And I'm just coming out of it. So keep at it, chin up. Obviously, mental health and just health in general is more important than all of the aforementioned things. But sometimes jumping back into work, especially in sort of stuff that we do, can be therapeutic if you do it right. And if you give yourself the appropriate breaks. I'm changing the exposure here because I want this to really pop. There we go. Saving it again. Okay. I like the way this is looking. Maybe there's too much repetition here, too much empty space. There we go. Yes. I think Ian Hubert in his videos likes to say, I'm not mad at it, and I never really understood it. Um, but now I do. I'm not mad at this. It's not terrible. I'm going to render the quilt and we'll call it because we're nearing the hour mark. Thanks so much to everybody that's been hanging. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. You'll be seeing more of me, so can't get rid of me that easily. We are upside down, but no matter, we'll fix it. There we go. And if you look over at the bottom right of my screen / your screen / our screen, here's the finished quilt. We've got a couple of hearts out of focus, but that's okay. You can really see the dimension. In person, it looks great. If you want to hang out and see it in person, let me know, because it's really something else. And if you want to get your own, here's the shameful plug. There's a link in my description that can get you $40 off of your own looking glass portrait. And they make excellent Valentine's Day gifts, Christmas gifts, birthday or bar mitzvah, or whatever you like to celebrate gifts. Benson Moon says something that I don't understand. And Per says, looks dope, appreciate you. And Nikki Chan says, drop that HOP. I will. Yes, we'll drop this link and you'll get your very own version of this quilt. Once I clean it up a little bit and it looks a little bit better than it does now. Belly Does says, not inspired at the moment. TBH, I have plenty of ideas, just no motivation to get started. Once I start, I can lose hours in Blender. It's just getting started. I know the feeling. I really, really do. I've gone sometimes just, weeks without opening Blender really, or, doing anything that I feel is productive, between quotes, and whenever I get back to it, I feel a lot better than I did before. And part of it is taking the break, and part of it is just getting back into it. So I encourage you to not necessarily force yourself, but definitely give yourself the time to fall back in love with it, because every time I do, I stay for a bit longer. It's not something that came naturally to me. I'm still very new and fresh when it comes to Blender, especially, and 3D. More of a technologist role, kind of jack of all trades, master of several of them to some degree, but it's definitely worth it to just jump back into it. So if you're belly dose or you're watching asynchronously and you're kind of going through the same thing, we all go through those slumps, but fall 7 times, stand up 8, all that mushy stuff, Valentine's Day, you can do it. Now we'll swap over here. I'm back. Thanks so much for tuning in. This has been a lot of fun. It's now 5:56 my time, so we almost hit that 1 hour mark. But this is about as long as I wanted this project to take. There will be more like it. This was just happened to be something that I figured was going to be really easy and simple and fun for the holiday. Whether you participate in this or not, that's totally fine. But I think it's really worth it and fun for me, especially, to jump into this and kind of interact with everybody, and for people who are watching after the fact, who may enjoy seeing something new, learning about Looking Glass Portrait or whatever technology I happen to be talking about in that day. If you have any questions about what was happening in the stream, or just anything that maybe didn't make sense, certainly feel free to either drop them in the comments or reach out to me privately on Discord or Twitter or wherever you can find me on the web. And thanks so much again for those that are tuning in. If you're tuning in now or asynchronously, I'll see you in the next one. Enjoy.